even though you've shut me out, if you dare to open the door, I want to come in. I just want to have some time with you. I want to share a meal with you as friends. I want to know you, and I want you to get to know me. Think about the 3 most meaningful relationships that you have. Okay, and probably we can identify them fairly quickly. Is there something that characterizes each of those relationships? What does it take to get to know somebody? If you want to turn with me, this is we're going to flip to Genesis, so all the way back to the other end. Genesis chapter 1. I know I scared a number of people last week when I said that we're going to be going from Genesis to Revelation this week. But what we're doing right now, just for a minute, we're going to look at kind of the bookends of the Bible. One verse in the beginning of Genesis, and then in a minute we're going to look at one verse at the end of Revelation. And these 2 verses kind of frame where we're going for the next number of weeks in this series about having a relationship with God. And what I want us to do today is kind of, and even not just today, but over the next few weeks, to ask ourselves this question: am I really pursuing a deepening relationship with God? Am I pursuing that, really? Or is God actually the one doing all the pursuing, and I'm kind of being oblivious because I'm just staying busy with everything that I've got going on over here? Genesis chapter 1, I'm going to start at verse 26. Then God said, "Let us make human beings in our own image, to be like ourselves. They'll reign over the fish in the sea, the birds in the sky, the livestock, all the wild animals on the earth, and the small animals that scurry along the ground." So God created human beings in his own image. In the image of God, he created them. They kind of seem to reinforce that, right? God's created man, and he's created human beings in his own image. In the image of God, he created them, male and female, he created them. And then this next couple words kind of caught me a little bit off guard a few weeks ago. He says, "Then God blessed them." Okay, so what have they done so far to deserve a blessing? Nothing, right? They've just been made. They've done nothing to warrant receiving a blessing from God. But God says, let's bless them. And he goes ahead and he gives them responsibility for this earth. The same responsibility that he has for the entire universe, he gives over to man. He says, I'm going to rule over the universe, but I'll have you guys rule over the earth. See, God created us specifically for relationships, but he also created us in relationship with himself. Adam and Eve were created and then placed in the garden with no fear whatsoever of rejection, with zero shame. They didn't even know what that was. In perfect relationship. And then to express his love for them, God decides to bless them. And they'd never done anything deserving of a blessing at that point. See, that's kind of a different picture of God than I sometimes had, especially growing up. I kind of thought a blessing from God was what you got if you were really good. Or if you pulled off something really well, then maybe you could count on a blessing from him, provided you hadn't done too many bad things before that to counter the good thing that you were doing. But I always thought that the blessing was something that came as the result of something we had done. And right off the bat, right in the very beginning here, it says he creates them, and then the very next thing he does is he said, let's go ahead and bless them. That's a slightly different picture of God than I've had at certain points in my life. And then these references to being made in the image of God in Genesis 5, you don't have to turn to it, but it talks again about man being made in the image of God, and then it talks about Adam having a son in his image. And we start to get this word picture that illustrates how even as we look at our own children, sometimes we see ourselves in them, right? And while we know they're not us, they're part of us. And in the same way, God looks at us, and no, we're not God. But there's something about us that reminds him of himself when he looks at us, that we are his creations, that he made. We are the one creation that he made, able to relate to him. And he made us as much like himself as he possibly could. We were created for relationship, and we were created in relationship. And then he blesses them. Why? We just got here. We haven't done anything yet. That's not the issue. I'm blessing you because I love you. You know what the Bible is, really? It's a pretty amazing story. But it's a love story, actually, about God who created these prized creations so that he could have a relationship with them, and then they broke that trust and broke that intimacy that he had put in place. And then the rest of the book really is about God working real hard to put all that back together again and make relationship with himself possible again. It's about relationships that are shattered and broken, and then redemption coming in and things being restored the way he wanted them in the first place. If you grab a handful of pages and flip back to Revelation, this is where we're jumping to Revelation chapter 21. Revelation 21. And here's the context of Revelation 21. The whole thing is over, right? At this point, Jesus came, he rose, he redeemed the world. Satan has been overcome and slain. Armageddon has taken place at this point. Sin's been overthrown. There's all kinds of weird stuff if you read through Revelation. But the whole thing, at this point, we're at the end of Revelation. The whole thing's over. And now God's putting everything back into place the way he wanted it to be all the way along. And at this point, this is where John, the disciple that Jesus kind of selected to take care of his mom, the one that the Bible refers to, the disciple that Jesus loved, John, who was very close to him, he's been exiled on this island for quite some time, and he writes the book of Revelation. Well, he writes this, and looking at verse 1, it says, "Then I saw a new heavens." Everything's been made new now, and a new earth. For the old heaven, the old earth had disappeared, and the sea was also gone. And I saw the holy city, the new Jerusalem, coming down from God out of heaven like a bride, beautifully dressed for her husband. And then I heard a loud shout from the throne saying, "Look, God's home is now among his people." This is Jesus talking now. God's home is now among his people. He'll live with them and they will be his people. God himself will be with them. That's just amazing. He's putting things back together the way he originally wanted things to be. And this little verse here said 4 things. It says it's back together. God is their God. They've been reclaimed as his people. They look at him as their God, and he sees them as his people. And after all these thousands and thousands and thousands of years, God has put things back together exactly the way he wanted it to be. And he's paved the way for us to have a complete, intimate relationship with him with absolutely zero fear of rejection. And then look what it says in verse 4. This is, I don't know, it kind of caught me off guard. It says, "He will wipe every tear from their eyes." When was the last time you felt comfortable enough with someone to let them reach their hand up and take their finger and wipe a tear away from your eye? In the context of creator and created, can you think of anything more personal than that? Who does that remind you of? What kind of picture comes to your mind when you picture that? Is that a spouse? Is it a mom or a dad or a grandparent? Who are you close enough to that you would permit them to do that? And is that somebody that you would keep at the other side of the door if they were knocking and wanted to come in? See, when we start our day, that's the kind of God he wants us to know and to approach. One that cares that deeply and is involved that closely.
That's the cry of our hearts, Lord. We want to be just like you.